Good morning, everyone. I know people are still rolling in, but we have a really full agenda. So we're just going to get started with the intro. So that way we can get things rolling and get on our way. So good morning. You are in the correct place. Welcome to our April general membership meeting. My name is Kevin Lee. I'm the Programs and Member Services Coordinator here at the Coalition, and we have with us today Danielle Palmer-Friedman, our Communications Lead, and Hallie Willis, our Policy Manager. Welcome, welcome. We are so glad to have you with us today. We, like I mentioned, have a very full meeting, so thank you for understanding as we just dive right into this meeting. If you just joined us, you're not late. We're just starting a little bit early with our introduction. The Coalition on Homelessness is a member-based organization, and this meeting's intent is to bring people together. That's service providers, community and government partners, and allies alike. We come together every month on the third Thursday in the spirit of building community, exchanging important and timely information, offering professional development skills and resources, and working to create a sense of solidarity amongst ourselves and our community. So we are truly glad that you're here with us today. If we can move on to the next slide really quick, just for a moment, we have our What We Do slide. This goes a little bit more into detail about what we do, who we are, and I encourage you to take a look. This meeting is being recorded and it will live on our YouTube channel. So if I can have somebody drop our YouTube channel link into the chat. Thank you. We record all of our meetings and all of our trainings. There is a ton of information there for service providers and community, so we encourage you to take a look and subscribe. If you would like to not be in the recording, please just utilize the chat function for questions and engaging. We do love to see faces, so if you're in a place where you're able to put your cameras on and that feels appropriate today, we love to see faces. You have the ability to change your name in the little Zoom box. We like to know who you are, what your pronouns are, and how you might be connected to this work and this coalition. If you're with the media today, we really just ask that you quote and pull information from either a coalition staff or our official presenters. If there's someone else that you're hoping to connect with, please just reach out to contact@homelessinfo.org and we'll connect you with that agency for follow-up. And then if I can ask somebody to put in the link in the chat for our email signups. Of course, many of you are already receiving our emails, but we know that Zoom links can get passed around and shared, which is great. Please continue inviting folks. But if that is you and you do want to stay connected with us and receive our updates, and we would love to stay connected with you. So please sign up for our emails. One quick announcement is a save the date for our next membership meeting. It's Thursday, May 21st. This is our in-person annual membership meeting, or rather it will be in person this year. We're super excited. It's an extended meeting. The meeting starts at 9, but if you come anytime after 8:30 a.m., there's going to be coffee and tea, breakfast treats, and a chance to greet old colleagues and meet new friends. We'll have hands-on activities, letterpress printing, a video photo booth, and more. Special note, if you have a ukulele, please bring it. Like I mentioned, we've got some very exciting stuff planned. We also have some amazing guest speakers lined up. We're going to share highlights from our work together over the past year, as well as introduce you to our slate of candidates for the board of directors and open voting for member orgs. So there's more details to come. So please register now and stay tuned for more. Okay, let's go ahead and move back to the agenda slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so we're very excited. We've got a great agenda today. We're going to dive right into our state legislative update with our policy manager, Hallie Willis. We have a number of guests from elected representatives to policy advocates who are ready to share all about this year's legislative session. We will then move on to our advocacy regarding HUD proposed rule action and changes to SNAP. And of course, we always have time scheduled at the end of our meetings for community announcements. So if you have a community announcement to share today, you can go ahead and email me at kevin@homelessinfo.org. And please stay till the end and we'll queue that up and have you share your announcement. And also if you don't have something to share over, but you do want to share, you can just raise your hand when we get to that portion. So now to wrap up our meeting intro, I'm going to be switching gears, and I would like to ask somebody to volunteer and read out our mission, vision, and values. Please don't be shy. Look around to see if anybody has raised their hand. I see a raised hand. Jody Rao, hello and welcome. Please feel free to come off mute and read our mission, vision, and values.
Hi, friends. It's so good to be back with you all. Our mission, we mobilize our community to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice. A vision, a region that acts on a shared sense of responsibility to ensure that everyone has a home, and our values are equity, justice, and collective action.
Thank you, Jody. We're very excited to welcome you back to this meeting, and I'm sure people are happy to hear your voice. But yes, thank you. This is a long-standing tradition of the coalition, as you may all know, to read out our mission, vision, and values, because this is the work that we all put into action. So with that, I would like to welcome Hallie Willis to take it away and introduce our first guests.
Thanks, Kevin. And thanks everyone so much for joining us. This is our legislative wrap-up meeting. The legislature adjourned in the middle of March. We're joined today by some amazing champions in the Washington State Legislature. We've got Representative April Berg, Representative Strom Peterson, and Senator Emily Alvarado on the agenda today. All three of these lawmakers are huge champions for issues related to housing and homelessness and progressive revenue. Without these three, really, we would not have been able to take the steps forward that we did this legislative session. So we'll hear from them today. We'll also hear from some amazing advocates. I do also want to share some kudos for folks who are not here today, particularly to Representative Mia Gregerson, who was an amazing sponsor for a bill that would protect people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. You will hear more from us about that next session. And she also worked alongside Representative Nicole Macri on the budget and secured some really important protections for permanent supportive housing in the budget that's under federal threats. Senator Bateman also has done some amazing work on the bills that you're going to hear about today. So wanted to share some kudos for her as well. We've also got, as you know, a lot of staff that work behind the scenes, staff and advocates and lobbyists to make these to work on amendments and really work these bills through the process. So I want to share some love for our contract lobbyist, Melanie Smith, as well as Michelle Thomas from the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance, and others. We've got folks from FutureWise who've done amazing work on these bills, as well as from Plymouth Housing. So sending some love to them as well. And of course, put some emojis, let's give some emojis, send some love to each other, because we had more than 500 people speak up with us during the legislative session. We sent thousands of letters together, and that really helped elevate these issues for lawmakers. We heard that House Bill 2266 was really one of the issues that lawmakers heard about the most during this session, and that is thanks to all of you. So huge thanks. With that, let's see, do we have Representative Berg with us yet? We do. Hello. I'm very pleased to introduce Representative April Berg from the 44th Legislative District. That's up in Snohomish County. She was a huge advocate for the Millionaires Tax. And I'll invite her to just go ahead and jump in and tell us all about that effort and the Millionaires Tax and why we should care about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yes, you should definitely care about it. So I'm State Representative April Berg. I'm so happy to be here to talk about the Millionaires Tax. Even though it took us 24 hours on the House floor, I promise not to spend 24 hours talking about it, although I could. But I just want to hit on some of the highlights, which is what it is, why we did it, and how it's going to impact communities just like yours. So the what it is the first thing I like to start with. So it is a tax on that dollar after $1 million that you earn each year as wages. To give you an idea of what that means, you would have to earn $83,000 a month. That $83,000 a month would not be taxed. That dollar after the 83,000. So we are talking about extreme wealth that is currently going untaxed in our state, and it makes us an outlier tax policy wise. 41 other states actually do tax income just like that, and a lot of them tax it on the first dollar earned. So this is truly a progressive tax on the truly wealthy of us in our state. We did make history because we don't have an income tax. And so you will see some things in the courts and I'm sure on the ballot. And we're going to probably be coming back to ask folks to help us explain, especially on the ballot, if it gets there, why this is so important and why so necessary. But I truly believe as a policymaker, it is absolutely legal. So, a little bit of why we did this. We know that we are in a crisis. We know HR 1 made us even more of a donor state to the federal government, giving a lot more than we get. We had to sustain horrific cuts to basic social safety net services, and we knew we were already dealing with an upside down tax code. So we are number 49. The only state with a more regressive tax code than us is Florida. So those things all kind of intersected the session, and this went from a completely impossible idea to a completely necessary policy change. And so I kind of call it my moonshot season, and that's what it was. Something completely seemingly impossible, but then all of a sudden becoming incredibly necessary and possible. So we did it. We did it after 24 hours on the House floor. We did it after 81 amendments. And we did it in a way that really brought the teamwork and the team spirit of the legislature together. So I'm so happy my other colleagues are on the call today because this truly was an act of teamwork, both in the House and in the Senate, to get through those 81 amendments in 24 hours. And as the chair of approps reminded me this weekend, for those of us on appropriations, like Representative Peterson, that was a 36-hour day for us. So Strom, I don't know if you did the math, we were there 36 complete hours, starting with approach at 8 a.m. So it was long, but it was absolutely worth it. So let's talk about some of the good things that are in it that are going to impact communities that you represent. So first off, it's your grocery cart. As you're moving your grocery cart down the aisle, think of almost everything in that cart will now be tax exempt. Groceries are already tax exempt. Feminine hygiene products are already tax exempt. Now you're going to have all of your personal hygiene products, your diapers, and as you move to the back of the store, those headache medicines and pain relief, over the counter medicine, that is all going to be tax free. So that is almost a 10% tax decrease for every family in our state in the grocery store every day. I cannot speak about that enough. The other thing is the working family tax credit. And those of you on the call, which almost is everyone who helped get that amazing historic legislation passed in 2022, well, we have expanded it now, not only by age, so now everybody 18 and up will be able to take advantage of it, but also the thresholds. And to give you an idea of what that looks like, so starting the first check will be 2029, but you'll be eligible in 2028. If you are a married couple with 3 kiddos, the threshold for you to collect what would be $1,300 per year will be $137,000 in income. And remember, this is not means tested in terms of like if you live in Okanagan versus King County versus Mason versus Jefferson, right? So that $137,000, that could be a real middle income family in some of those places. Now we know in King County, that would be a stretch for me to say that's a middle class family, but we are really going to be touching so many more households. In fact, 460,000 additional households will be touched by this credit. So again, working families across the state starting at 18 will be impacted by this change. And then the last thing I want to talk about is school meals. And being a two-time recovering school board director, it is a passionate thing of my heart. I know it's an entitlement program, and a lot of folks have feelings about that. But I will tell you, it's really hard for a third grader to know what their parents earn and if what they earn in that moment gets them a sandwich or not. What they do know is they have to show up to school every day and they have to show up ready to learn. And so now breakfast and lunch will be provided to everyone who crosses the threshold into one of our public schools, regardless of their parents' income, regardless of if they know what their parents' income is. And that is a huge historic change. And we've seen that change in Minnesota, and the outcomes are amazing. For every dollar that they are spending on that program, they're saving approximately 12 in other social services and other safety net services that they no longer have to provide to low income children. So it's something that's going to keep on giving. And then just lastly, I want to say just thank you. Thank you to everybody on this call for all of your support, getting it across the finish line. It does seem like a lot of time spent on tax policy, but it will pay for all of the good programs, social safety nets, and community items that we need each and every day. So thank you so much. Happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Rep. Berg. I know you've got a tight schedule, but you're welcome to stick around as long as you like. We've got a couple extra minutes. If you could maybe talk a little bit about what does this mean, given that we're in an environment where the budget has been cut, there were big cuts last year to human services, also big cuts this year in certain areas. What does this mean for our ability going forward to pay for things like housing and human services, particularly when we're looking at really huge cuts from the Fed?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it really gives us additional capacity. And depending on how we use that capacity, so for instance, if you're looking at the Housing Trust Fund, a lot of that money comes from our capital budget. That budget is bonded on the revenue we generate in the general fund, or that goes into the general fund. So as we grow that with the Millionaires Tax by $3.7 billion a year, that will give us additional bonding capacity if we choose to take it. The other issue is that this is truly incremental. So if you look at our tax policy as a spectrum, we started at cap gains, amazing. We are doing amazing things with that program and perfecting it each and every session. Now we've got income tax that we will be implementing. Next, we need to really start talking about B&O. A lot of our small businesses are like, that's just as regressive as sales tax. That's our next thing to tackle. And then, of course, property tax. And we've got to start studying that. So as we make these incremental changes, we'll be able to buy back, shore up, and make more robust investments in social services as we go down that spectrum. I like to say it's a spectrum because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. And I know that this is not a magic bullet. I wish it was, but it is the first step in incremental tax policy change that will get us to a more robust and sustainable budget.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rep. Berg. Give Rep. Berg some hearts, some flowers in the in the emojis. I love those so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. You have worked incredibly hard on this Millionaires Tax. It really could not come at a better time. So thank you so much for all your work. Thank you. And with that, I'm pleased to invite our next legislative champion, Representative Strom Peterson, who was the prime sponsor on House Bill 2266 for housing fairness. If you're on our mailing list, you got about 1,000 emails from me about this bill this year. Representative Peterson originally introduced this bill 3 years ago, and he deserves so much credit for working so hard on this issue, but also for really working closely with us, working hand in hand with advocates as we went through every step of the way, including making amendments to this bill. So not every lawmaker does that, and really want to give him some huge credit for working hand in hand with us. And I will pass it to you, Representative Peterson, to share more about House Bill 2266 and what it does.
Great. Thanks, everybody. And next time I'm putting in my writer that I don't follow April Berg. Of course, I wouldn't want to follow Senator Alvarado either. So next time I just want to go first so I don't have to follow any other legislators and try to
We'll see what we can
Try to
do about
top that.
that.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Yeah, April, thanks so much for the work, and as and another housing champion. We can't let the incredible work that she did in the Finance Committee also overshadow the fact that she's one of the true champions in the housing space. So, um, well, you all kind of started out talking about kind of what you all did to get House Bill 2266 through, and I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, the team was just remarkable and really adept. Oftentimes it's like we'll get somebody will propose an amendment and we'll think about it and then we'll talk to the advocates and sometimes that process, especially in a short session, can take a while. But man, we were on it, making hard decisions, but smart, quick decisions. And that's really how this bill got across the finish line, because it was, I mean, there was a moment, and I think everybody's relatively familiar with the bill, right? This is going to make sure that all cities have to allow the siting of this housing. I'm pretty sure I stole this from Representative Macri a few years ago, that housing is housing, right? That was the mantra we were going in. No matter where you are on the economic scale, you deserve a place to live in the community in which you want to live. So, it was getting super contentious. At one point, there were, I don't know, 18 or so really kind of caustic Republican amendments on the bill. They were just trying to slow things down and just kind of drown it in like silly things, not even substantive amendments. And so I want to give some credit to the ranking member of the Housing Committee, Republican Sam Lowe, who we sat down together. I may or may not have been a little heated, and just talked about how do we get this done. This is and he delivered. He went to his caucus, explained to them. We found some compromise in places that we all could agree to, and we were able to get the bill done. So again, just incredible power that you have in advocacy. This is one of those things, we go to these things and we tell folks, no, it really does work when you talk to your legislators, when you send an email, when you make a call, when you show up if you can. It really makes a difference. And so this is one of those examples, right? So just excited about how this worked, and some of the other smaller things that we've done in the past. I just actually looked at Senator Bateman's newsletter that she sent out, and this year we passed 8 or 9 housing bills. Some of them small, but all of them dedicated to making housing more affordable, making it easier to build housing that more folks can get into. So lots of little things that we've been doing, lots of big things that we've been doing, but 2266 is one of the biggest. And of course, I want to give a special shout out. I saw Dan was on the call. I think I saw, and this is what happened. You said, this is the third year in a row that introduced this bill. And it was a conversation that Representative Gregerson and I had with Dan about the stuff that was happening in with Catholic Community Services. And, one of those moments where my head just exploded on, I'm writing a bill. So we did, with the help of Noha, who is now with the Senate. And that's how it started. So it's that advocacy, it's that one-to-one conversation that you can have with your representative to really make substantive change in policies, whatever. Obviously, there are a whole bunch of people here that are interested in housing and solving the homelessness crisis. But if you're, I'm sure you also have a lot of other things that you're interested. So just want to emphasize again what it means for us as legislators to hear from you, both on the front end when you're thinking about legislation, and then throughout the whole process, and then to have a moment like today to celebrate. So thank you all for the work. Allison, I was going to give you a shout out too, but yeah, just amazing. So I will stop talking now.
Thank you, Strom. Hallie, I hope it's okay. I just want to jump in here because I realize we have many folks on this call, some of whom are longtime advocates who are deeply connected to what what is possible in Olympia and how many years it can take to get to the possible, and some of whom might be just learning about legislative action and how it supports our work for the first time coming today. That's one of the great things about this coalition is we have a huge range among the 68 folks on the call today. I want to just say it's a pretty extraordinary thing, Representative Peterson, to have a partner in the legislature like you. And of course, we have two other lawmakers who are exceptional in this way joining you today, Representative Berg and Senator Alvarado, who come to the community and listen and invite, as you just heard Rep. Peterson do, tell me what you need and we will work on legislation about it. If those of you who were working in this sector during the pandemic remember, DSHS closed public-facing service in the CSOs a week or two into the pandemic in 2020, and those vital hubs of services to our community, especially people without internet access or the ability to wait on hold on the phone for 6 or more hours, those remained closed. And Representative Peterson listened to us. We had never, the coalition had never done anything like this before. And we talked with him, and he eventually agreed to write and sponsor a bill which passed almost unanimously in the House and the Senate to reopen the DSHS offices. Of course, the then governor vetoed it, and that's another story for another time. But we got the CSOs open. And I just really want to, acknowledge how extraordinary it is to have your approach to those of us doing this work on the ground, and to thank you again, Rep. Peterson.
Thanks, Allison. And maybe Rep. Peterson, if you could, you sort of gave some examples of, there's some stuff we were hearing about in South King County. There's also, things happening in North King County as well, where we saw cities placing barriers and ultimately preventing shelter and housing from being built. Can you maybe just quickly talk a little bit about what kinds of things we were seeing, like what was the need for this bill, and what important changes does it make? Maybe for folks that weren't as tuned in along the way.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that. So, a few years ago, we passed House Bill 1220 with the help from a lot of people on this call. And that really kind of changed some of the dynamics. So back in the olden days, like 6 years ago, 7 years ago, a city, when they were told, with here are your growth projections for population, you need to make sure you're going to account for that number of housing units, but that was it. So it could be, you can have $1 million condos or giant McMansions. There was no breakdown. So with 1220, we said you have to account for population growth, but you have to account for each kind of income level in population growth and make sure that your comprehensive plan and all your local ordinances can match those numbers. So we know the need for housing at all income levels, workforce housing for those that are in deep poverty, as well as market rate housing. So that was kind of the first step, and we were pretty pleased with that work. We're like, okay, now cities will step up and they will set up, kind of create these bands. Well, lo and behold, a number of cities kind of found some loopholes around that work. And part of that was in operating agreements. And this is especially true when it comes to the step housing model, when it comes to permanent supportive housing, emergency housing, and transitional housing. So cities were putting in place really onerous operating agreements. You have to have 24 hours a day security. You have to have extra fencing. You can't be within 1,000 feet of a school. You can't be within 1,000 feet of a park. You can't be. So basically, through all of these operating agreements, either making it so expensive that one of our operators just walk away. It's like, well, we can't afford to do that, or we're reducing services so much because we're paying for all of this other stuff that we don't need. Doesn't make any sense. Or with these different, buffers that they put in, they basically made it impossible to build anything. So that's what a number of cities, and this was happening a lot of places. There was kind of a concentration of, it seems, of bad actors in South King County. And that's where Dan Weiss was doing her incredible work. So this really went after that side of the equation. It's like you cannot, again, housing is housing, right? This was the mantra that kept coming in. So if you can spend 3 nights in a motel as you're traveling through Seattle, you should be able to spend 3 nights in an emergency shelter because you've just been evicted from your apartment. So those kind of just simple equations was really what drove this legislation. Of course, nothing is simple, but that was, that's what was behind it. And hopefully this has kind of closed the next set of loopholes that some cities will lose. And I think the other thing, and again, the work that coalitions like this do, there have been some seismic changes in local government in some of these cities that were bad actors. So good for you for getting that activation on the local level as well, because now we have, not everywhere, but we have a lot more partners ready to do this housing type. I just had coffee with relatively new city council member in Linwood, and he's just like, tell me who to talk to. So I introduced Sarah from Plymouth Housing to him, and I was like, this is who you talk to because they're ready to go. So thank you also for the work that you're doing at the other levels of government to make sure that we can implement these plans that we're doing from Olympia.
Thank you, Rep. Peterson, so much. I'll invite folks to send some emojis your way to thank you both for all your work and for joining us today. And it was a great layup for Sarah because I've got both Sarah and Dan, and just want to invite them to say a few words. Dan Wise is the co-director now of Everyone Deserves Housing. Sarah is here from Plymouth Housing. Both of them worked super, super, super hard on this bill from the beginning. And maybe I'll just start with Dan and see if you want to chime in with the real life impact of House Bill 2266 and what you expect.
Yeah, hello. I'm Dan Wise. For many years, I was with Catholic Community Services, but I just switched and am building a new organization called EDH, or Everyone Deserves Housing, focused on street level poverty and connecting folks from the streets into shelters and ultimately into housing. First, I want to say thank you, Representative Peterson, Senator Alvarado, Representative Gregerson, so many others, Representative Macri. I think, as providers, we often have really frustrating experiences of just trying to meet folks where they're at and bring them inside. And to have folks in Olympia not just empathize with that frustration, but really get frustrated themselves and take action is just brings me so much hope that we really do have the talent and the leadership to care about folks on our streets and make a difference in this community. And I think, when I was struggling to develop shelter in South King County, having folks hear your outrage is just, I don't know, it just keeps you going, right? You're like, yeah, we're not out here doing this alone. We have all these really smart, talented folks behind us. And I think, Representative Peterson and Representative Gregerson early on in those first days were those sources of hope for me. And they also just stuck with it. It took 3 legislative sessions and they didn't say yeah, okay, well, we tried that. We're moving on to something else, maybe more winnable. This one's hard, right? Having folks that stick with it, get it, and stay for the long haul is just, it's what we need in this community. And I think also like the Millionaires Tax, right? It's folks that are committed to like real, true change in equity and how we're allocating things like land use and wealth in this community. And that's, it's really just super inspiring. So mostly just wanted to come today to say thank you. Thanks for not giving up on us, and thanks for hearing from providers and folks in the field and folks on the streets about what's important. And also thanks to the coalition, you know, like just having a space like this to bring providers together does make the work less lonely, and we are more powerful and we can do more together, right? Like just all my years working with Allison and folks at the coalition and seeing like the beauty in community and folks trying to make change and giving voice to that and elevating those voices is pretty magical. So I don't know if that's what I was supposed to say, but that's what I have today.
Perfect, Dan. Thank you so much. And just huge credit to Dan, who worked really, really hard on the bill and helped us really understand the like on the ground impact of stuff. There were a lot of like 8 a.m. phone calls trying to figure this out. So huge credit to Dan. I'll invite next Sarah Dickmeyer from Plymouth to add your 2 cents as well.
Yeah, echoing everything Dan just said, that feeling of, oh, they get it, is a very real feeling of relief that I remember talking to my coworker about in early January of just, oh, this is really wonderful to be working and advocating alongside these champions. So Hallie asked me to talk about the role that advocacy played in this bill passing. And I was thinking that, you know, advocacy starts with our attention. And we've all seen, especially the people on this call, we've all seen opposition to new shelter and supportive housing get louder and more creative, all while homelessness and housing affordability is getting worse. And so for the last 2 years, since the original version of this bill was introduced in the 24 session, our legislative champions and advocacy leaders have been gathering stories and examples, citing delays, shifting approval standards, local requirements that, you know, potentially or even explicitly violated state and federal anti-discrimination law. Like all of those stories and our experiences helped shape what the bill turned out to be. And so when it was introduced in January, we all were ready and our audiences were ready. And from my perspective, what was so notable about this year was the breadth of voices at the table and in community who were supporting this bill. You know, we had obviously, you know, human services and housing organizations, but we also had government leaders at the state level and individual city council members from across the state. We had food banks, we had other justice advocacy organizations, we had healthcare workers. For folks who watched the hearings, you know, some of the most moving testimony came from like medical professionals who were talking about having to discharge people onto sidewalks. Testimony from people who had lived in transitional housing after exiting incarceration and are now on their feet and felt they had a duty to advocate for the services that had helped them. Testimony from one city council member who said, you know, who talked about having to receive people in need from communities next door to them in the next city over because those cities didn't have enough shelter or resources. And what seemed to bring all these people together was this agreement that we can't be treating some of our neighbors differently simply because of their income, abilities, or background. And that the last thing we should be doing right now is making it harder to bring people inside and build housing. And so all of the emails for sign-ins, calls to contact your legislators, they made sure that lawmakers knew that. And, you know, as Hallie said, there were hundreds of messages. We heard from one lawmaker that second only to the Millionaires Tax, this was what they heard from the most. Of all the different hearings, there were over 4,000 yes sign-ins, pro sign-ins. And, you know, we had almost 1,000 people at Housing and Homelessness Advocacy Day, where this was one of the top bills that people were advocating for. And all of that not only makes it easier to say yes, it makes it harder to say no. And so, you know, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone for any part that you played in getting it over the finish line. It all matters. Thank you.
Sarah and Dan, thank you so much. Sarah and Dan both were deeply involved, both in giving testimony and helping other people to speak up, but we're also really involved behind the scenes as well. So huge credit to you both. Sarah even made friendship bracelets about House Bill 2266. And I think I'll just wrap this part up by saying, like, this is a great example of a really important bill that takes many years to pass. So we've been working this for 3 years. Super thrilled that it has passed the legislature and is now signed into state law. So thank you all, and thanks to Rep. Peterson as well. And with that, I'm gonna move us to another enormous housing champion. I feel like I'm introducing everybody the same, but it's true. We've got Senator Emily Alvarado with us today from the 34th Legislative District that includes parts of West Seattle and White Center and Vashon. And we've got so much to thank you for, including all your work on House Bill 2266, keeping that front of mind in the Senate, and also all your work in other housing arenas, including expanding housing in commercial zones and adding some really important funding flexibility for affordable housing that's going to help us cope with federal cuts that are coming down the pipe. So with that, very pleased to welcome Senator Alvarado. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hallie, and hi, everyone. I love coming to the Coalition's event. It's so wonderful to be here again. So in Olympia this last year, I would say we continue to have a lot of people who are interested in housing, which is great. We have real momentum on housing. And I think we need to continue to work hard to remind people that for folks with low incomes, for folks on a fixed income, for people who are exiting homelessness, the kind of deeply affordable housing that's needed requires additional state investment on operating and services so that people can live stable, healthy lives. The market is not there and will never, based on the way housing is financed by capital, won't meet the needs of extremely low-income people, and we have to do more to step up and make that housing a reality. And you all know super well that, especially in light of federal disinvestment and federal cruelty, pulling away HUD COC funds, really stalling out on a lot of operating and services funding that our communities rely on, we're being asked more and more at the state and local level to step up to provide that critical operating and services funding to make housing work for low-income people. And so we brought that voice in part because of your advocacy and folks who have been advocating across the state on the impacts of HUD COC funding. We brought that conversation to the legislature this session. We're able to do two things, and my message will be, it's just a start. Let's keep advocating on it. The first thing we did was, thanks to folks like Rep. Nicole Macri and others, the budget has a $15 million set aside to help do some important backfills for supportive housing in the event that COC funding is lost. So that's a good little buffer. We know that's a drop in the bucket, but it's some recognition. The other thing is we passed Senate Bill 6027, which was legislation that provides local communities with more flexibility on existing revenue sources they have. We've passed over the years, we've given cities and counties tools to be able to invest in affordable housing, and this gives them more flexibility to use those funds on operating and services funding for existing buildings and to preserve existing buildings. You know, we all get excited about doing new stuff, but if we let buildings deteriorate, if we, pull operating funds out of the buildings we have, people are going to lose their housing. They're going to become homeless and organizations are going to struggle. So this gives some flexibility so that cities can invest in the housing that we have and keep people stable. It also makes some tweaks to the state's longstanding operating maintenance and services funding program. I know some of you who are providers have seen that we do things kind of backwards here in Washington. We have annual funding rounds for operating and services contracts. You need to have operating there for a long time to keep a building stable. And I know some of you have struggled seeing operating contracts decrease. And then you're left scrambling. How do we serve people in our communities? So that bill also made changes to help create more stability across the years for providers so that we can keep buildings high quality and we can keep services intact, keep case managers on site for the buildings that support extremely low income people. So that's what we were able to do. I'll say this, that doesn't even scratch the surface. The feds right now are only making things worse. But even assuming they could start to make things better, we have long relied on the federal government for vouchers, for Section 8 vouchers, for project-based vouchers. We've relied on them for continuum of care funding, for home funding, for everything to help operate housing for people with the lowest incomes. It's not there anymore. And so I challenge all of us, I'm going to be a partner with all of you, to think about what's our next step. We have an aging population. We need operating subsidy so that older adults don't become homeless. This is just crazy to me. Older adults, largest growing group of folks who are experiencing homelessness. It's immoral. And we got to figure out how we do long-term operating funds so that low-income people have a chance to continue to live in Washington State. And that's going to, not surprisingly, it's going to take some kind of taxes, takes revenue. We know how to solve all these problems, just takes money, and it takes political will behind it. So we made some steps, and I hope that's inspiration for us to continue to take more steps together. Okay, second of all, we're able to pass some legislation, a little off topic for this group, but we do need more housing across our communities in all places. I had a bill that we were able to pass that makes it easier to build housing in lots of areas across our communities, including in places where we had historically only allowed commercial development, like strip malls. Turns out that kind of retail is kind of dead in our new economy. And taking over that land to build housing that our communities need is exciting. But there's a secret piece of this legislation that not a lot of people know about, which is probably my favorite, which is that like 2266, like Rep. Peterson's bill, where we saw barriers placed on step housing, right now there's a big barrier that's placed on affordable housing, including supportive housing, which is that local jurisdictions require that a lot of housing have ground floor retail, even affordable housing. But those of us in the biz know that very few people fund that ground floor. So it ends up sitting vacant. It drains budgets of nonprofits. It becomes a nuisance, or you have to go out and privately fundraise for it. So under this new bill, affordable housing that's subsidized with public money no longer has to build ground floor commercial unless they want to. So gets rid of that requirement. Look, if it's key for you to put healthcare on the ground floor, let's do it. If it's key for you and you have the funding to do something on the ground floor, good. But if it's not part of your model, then it shouldn't be a drain on your resources, and this bill makes it happen. I'll stop there. We have so much more work to do. I'm deeply grateful for this coalition because it brings voices to the table that we need to hear in Olympia. I said it in the chat, Dan and Sarah coming down made a difference. And we need your voices to continue to come down because we have a lot of work to do. I always believe, and Allison's a good cheerleader, both in the chat and in real life too, but it's so easy to imagine a world where everyone has a home. We have billionaires. If you can imagine people going to the moon, we can have people, I don't know, do all kinds of wacky things. super obvious that everyone can have a home. And it's going to take a lot of money to do it. It's going to take constant agitation and organizing, but this group helps make it happen. So I appreciate you all.
Thank you, Senator Alvarado. I love inviting you to these events because you always like get people so energized. And I think that is just absolutely the truth that it is not hard to imagine a world where everybody has a place to live. We know what it takes to get there. We just have to do it. And I think that in the time that in the 3 years or so that I've worked at the coalition, I've seen the sort of the public narrative and the dynamic around affordable housing, permanent supportive housing, shelter has really, really shifted in a positive direction. And I think that's huge credit to all the people who speak up, huge credit to all of our legislative champions that are here today. I think we're really moving closer to that future where that is, that's easier for more people to imagine and more motivating for more people to work towards. So
can I say one thing on that, Hallie?
Yeah.
Just one thing, which is we are moving in the right direction, but the attacks are real. The attacks on the model of housing first, on the vision of supportive housing, on bringing people inside and giving them shelter and safety so that they can figure out recovery or whatever else people need. The attacks are real. And between the Discovery Institute and the cruel streamers on YouTube or whatever they do, investigative something or other, they're attacking our work and our vision of fairness and safety for humans. And I will say this, you could see in bringing bills forward, even like 2266, you could see the attacks starting to take root in places like Olympia, the talking points coming out of supportive housing and housing first is a failed model. But we have so much both evidence and consistency and advocacy to beat back that narrative that we win. So we do need to stay on the offense because across the country, those attacks are real, and we need to continue to show that permanent supportive housing works, it's evidence-based, it's cost-effective, it's humane, and we're going to stand by it and keep investing in it. So thanks for letting me say that, Hallie.
Thank you so much. And I know Danielle is already thinking about clipping that last part and putting it up on our social media because that you could not say it better. So thank you so much, Senator Alvarado. We really, really appreciate you for all that you do. With that, go ahead and send some love to Senator Alvarado and all of our lawmakers that joined us today. I know that a couple of them had a tight schedule, so I think they've got to take off, but we're going to also invite some really, really excellent advocates to join in today to help us understand more about the Millionaires Tax. So we've got Emma Scalzo from the Balance Our Tax Code Coalition and Emily Vananek from the Washington Budget and Policy Center. These two were instrumental in both the behind the scenes and the in front of the scenes organizing around the Millionaires Tax. They held some just amazing coalition meetings of a super, super broad and powerful coalition that has been working this Millionaires Tax and was ultimately successful in passing it. So we know that it's not over. There's still a road ahead to make sure that this tax goes into effect. So thank you both for joining us. And Emily, did you want me to do your slides?
If you'd like to, that's great. Sure. But
yeah,
either way, yeah.
Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself and I'll get those pulled up.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, thanks so much, Hallie, and awesome speakers so far. Thank you so much to the representatives and senators who have really done the most this session. And we all know that Millionaires Tax took a lot of air out of the room. And we're happy to talk about next steps because we have a lot of work ahead. But Emily Vananek, they, them pronouns. I'm with the Washington State Budget and Policy Center, and I get the great honor to work with Emma Scalzo. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Emma. I use she, her pronouns, and I lead Balance Our Tax Code Coalition. We're a coalition of about 100 organizations across Washington, and we're broad and diverse, but we're all aligned in advocating for a more equitable and sustainable tax code here in Washington State. So the Millionaires Tax is a huge win and a huge step forward, but there's more work to do. So excited to talk more about that here today.
Yeah. So I'll start us out. So just before we just get into like the nuts and bolts, and this will be pretty quick, but just huge celebration to literally everyone in this room and everyone beyond this room that has advocated for a more balanced tax code. We have a long way to go, and this is the first step of true reform of our tax code. But the millionaire's tax, had you asked me of 6 months ago or a year ago whether we could do this, I would have been given a lot of pause. So we're in a really cool position right now to really take a big swing at our regressive tax system. Usually I'm here talking about like with a graph and nuts and bolts on our tax code. You all know how upside down our tax code is. So let's talk about like what comes next now that the billionaire's tax has been signed. And that is really all about defense, because we knew these next steps were coming all along. And it's just really important that everyone be on the same page about that, stay really grounded in that, and know what's coming. So there are two core next steps, and sorry about the sun in my eyes, but there are two core next steps, and that's going to be defending the millionaire's tax in the courts and at the ballot. Neither of these steps is going to prevent the administrative setup and infrastructure setup of the program. I'm sure you've already seen, and if you haven't, there's already been some articles outlining how there's going to be some pretty massive hiring going on at the Department of Revenue to try to get the infrastructure set up. We're really excited about that. But just know all of these challenges were expected. And there's defensive strategies in place. We're going to kind of speak to the latest updates, but again, more is going to unfold, and we'll give you some info on how to stay tuned. So let's go to the next slide. So just a little bit about the legal challenges that are coming up. So there's already been a lawsuit that's been filed. I believe Rob McKenna, former AG, is leading that on behalf of Brian Haywood and the Washington GOP. But basically, it is a lawsuit basically saying that the millionaire's tax is unconstitutional because of the way that our constitution is structured. There is this gets a little wonky, but the way our constitution is designed, it classifies income as property, and that is the legal question at play. The lawsuit's been filed in a local court, but we know that no matter the outcome of that ruling at the local level, it'll go up to the Supreme Court. So we know that this will be a more than probably a year-long process up at the state Supreme Court level. And then there's just not a lot of updates to that court case right now, but we're tracking it. I know there's a lot of people that are tracking this, and our Attorney General will be working on this. So more updates to come here. There are some legal considerations. There are just some things that I want to flag for you all. So let's go to the next slide. So just generally, we know we have a tax code that's outdated, but just want to put this in context. Our tax code that we rely on right now was built in the 1930s. It was also upheld by our state Supreme Court. Like the interpretation of whether or not something like a millionaire's tax is constitutional is upheld by some really outdated Supreme Court rulings from the 1930s. So we just know that it's past time to make these larger structural change. And we're excited to defend this policy in the courts. Please know that the opposition is working overtime. This is not the only lawsuit at play. There's actually another lawsuit on a separate challenge trying to challenge the use of the necessity clause in the bill. That is a clause that helps this infrastructure importantly get set up while these challenges are happening, because we know how important this infrastructure is. We're in a state without an income tax, so we have to set up the infrastructure to do this. Other states can make policy changes to the tax code quite quickly and have those come to life quite quickly because that infrastructure is already there. We have to build that from scratch. And then the third thing I would flag is, our local millionaire, Brian Haywood, who has tried many times to make to put various items on the ballot, is looking at also supporting Supreme Court races across the state, which are up on the ballot this fall. So I really want to clue you all into that. That is going to be a big part of this. If we see a massive change to the court, in a way that shifts the court more conservatively, that could threaten long-term progress. So please keep that on your radar, and we'll keep you posted. And thank you, Hallie and others, for keeping us clued into this space. We're happy to give these updates. I'm going to pass to Emma, who's going to talk about the ballot challenges.
Hey, thanks for the tee up. Yeah, so there will, either way, with the outcomes of these lawsuits, this tax will be challenged at the ballot in November of this year. So voters do have a chance to weigh in. I mean, I think with like the Republican proposed amendments, there was a lot of confusion on, the bill, and that folks wouldn't have an opportunity to weigh in. They actually do at the ballot this year, and it'll be really important for us to have a major turnout. Next slide. Okay, so opposition is already gathering signatures to repeal the tax, and so it will go to the ballot in terms of like us defending it and showing up. And we'll know more about that campaign viability by July, and there'll be, more to come with what approach the campaign is taking depending on the lawsuit at play. Next slide. But there's good news. So most of you all probably remember the recent 2109 initiative in 2024. It was attempting to repeal one of our only progressive taxes here in Washington State, the capital gains tax that got a shout out earlier. But folks showed up. They turned out for the capital gains tax because there was a large effort to educate folks on who's actually paying this tax. And when folks realized that it's predominantly the most wealthy people in our state, folks turned out at the ballot box to say that we prefer fully funding our schools or working to fund our schools over tax breaks for the ultra wealthy. So this will kind of be similar in that way, where there'll be a large education campaign about the tax, and that folks will be able to weigh in by defending it and voting no on its repeal initiative at the ballot. So there's a good case study to be made here, and that we can really have a strong turnout at the ballot to really show the momentum for further tax reform. So with the popularity of the capital gains tax, we had a lot of momentum going into this next session for tax reform. And similarly with the Millionaires Tax, we will have a similar opportunity to turn out far and wide for the Millionaires Tax and defending it. So lawmakers know that voters are on their side, and it's basically like the best poll we can have on public opinion and what we stand for here in Washington. And we know it's popular. We know that when we educate folks and we engage on issues about tax justice, that folks care about who's paying taxes and how. So it's going to take all of us, but there's a lot of good news here in terms of being ready and prepared and knowing what's at stake. Next slide. Okay, so next steps. There's a lot of work to do. So opportunities to engage coming up. Join Balance Our Tax Code for all the latest updates, especially on the legal challenges and what the ballot strategy will be. We're a coalition of over 100 organizations, so feel free to add your coalition or add your organization to the coalition. We do monthly briefings. We have subcommittees for policy and lobbying leads, and also communications folks that are really working to shift the narrative about tax reform and really push a strong defense campaign. Also, bringing all this information back to your advocates and communities, because the Republican amendments to the bill really did confuse a lot of folks on what the bill actually stands for. And it's truly a progressive tax reform measure that we want folks to feel passionate about when they go to the ballot. And then also just thanking your lawmakers for their hard work on the Millionaires Tax, so they know public opinion is on their side and that we have their back for further tax reform efforts. And this was not a small feat. This was a 60-day session, and lawmakers worked really, really hard, and they just deserve all the appreciation for tax reform and the millionaires tax. We were hearing that, lawmakers have a hard time with tax votes. Like, it's not easy to really move um, tax reform in this way, and doing it in such a major way. They deserve a ton of kudos, especially those who turned out, did a great floor debate, just saying a note to them, saying that you saw it, you appreciate them, and that you're excited to see what's next. Lawmakers tend to have like town halls and coffee setups, so you can drop in and just thank them for their hard work. That'll go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. And please feel welcome to drop any links if folks want to get in touch with Balance Our Tax Code Coalition. If you've got ways for folks to tune in, feel free to drop this in the chat. Thank you both so much. You've done really tremendous work on this. And we know we've not heard the last of the millionaires tax, and the coalition as a 501c3 can and does take positions on ballot measures. So we will be with you, and thank you both so much. Thanks. And continue our discussion of the millionaires tax. We've got Leanna Cresson from the Statewide Poverty Action Network. They do a lot of advocacy in Olympia, including to get cash in people's pockets who are living on low incomes. And they've been working for many, many, many years on the Working Families Tax Credit. As Rep. Berg mentioned earlier, the Working Families Tax Credit expansion is a huge and really important piece of this millionaires tax. So welcome, Leanna. And if you could tell us a little bit more about the tax credit expansion and who's eligible and what it means.
Hi, everybody. Leanna here. Good to be with you all today. Wow, what an amazing set of speakers that have gone before me today. Just lawmakers, advocates. Boom. Feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants over here. So wanted to take a minute to celebrate some of the wins, these like hard fought wins. So many people had a part in these things. So I'm here as a messenger, just one part in the puzzle today. But wanted to celebrate some of the wins to the Working Families Tax Credit that Representative Berg already mentioned a couple of them. These are things that will start in 2029, assuming all of those wins that Emma and Emily just highlighted. So as long as it passes, these things are going to be coming into effect in a few years. So the first one is that right now, if you've received the Working Families Tax Credit, you might know that it only applies for folks who don't have kids from 25 to 65. You could be eligible if you're 18 if you have dependents, but if you don't have dependents, folks sort of on either side of the age spectrum are currently excluded. Until now, so starting in 2029, the age expansion has been improved. So any adult, regardless of dependents over 18 whose income qualified, can qualify for this tax credit. It's a lot more simple. It makes sense. And it's great. So we're really excited about that part. The other big expansion, I'm going to put a chart in the chat. Colin and Emily, is to make sure that folks up to 100% of the need standard can actually qualify for this tax credit. This is going to really greatly expand who is eligible to receive the tax credit, which is amazing. We know that there's this sort of gap between what income qualifies you for most assistance programs and the income that you need to get by in the state and make ends meet. And so this policy really recognizes that gap and helps make sure that folks can get the help that they need. Even if it's just one tax credit, it still is meaningful, and it's hugely expanded. So in that chart, you'll see what it was before, what it is now, and by family size as well. So shout out to Budget and Policy Center for putting this together. Really appreciate their work on this. I thought I would also drop in the chat, if you're listening to this and you're like, wait, do I qualify for the Working Families Tax Credit? You should look, you should check it out. You can also apply for years gone by for the 3 years before. So Don't sleep on the tax credit. We love to see it. Gonna move right along here. The other thing that we wanted to do a quick highlight for this year that happened at the legislature was there was sort of a sinister industry-backed bill to expand payday lending. For the uninitiated, payday lending is a predatory lending practice that often traps folks in cycles of debt, and it's really tough to get out of. And this year there was an attempt from Money Tree to sort of make it worse. So right now the most you can take out is $700, and they wanted to expand it to $1,200 and make sure that it was tied to inflation so folks could take out more and more. The average person who's taking out a loan takes out at most $400. So this isn't something that the community was asking for. This isn't something that was sort of this groundswell of like, hey, we need more access to cash in this way. But instead, the people at Money Tree decided, I bet we could extract more money from communities if we expanded this. And so they sold it as this access to cash situation, but we know that's not what it is. We were able to thwart them with the power of community. So really got folks to come in together, sign in against this. Took a lot of time, took a lot of effort from a lot of advocates in this room, a lot of advocates in our just in the legislative space. And so really appreciate everyone who raised their voice to let folks know that yes, people need access to cash, but no, it should not be predatory. People should be able to get out of these lending cycles, and it should lead to financial freedom, not financial restraints. So thought I'd drop a little bit our legislative recap here also in the chat that has a little bit more about this bill and a little bit more about the Working Families Tax Credit expansion. But my thanks to the coalition for having me here today, and shout out to all the speakers before me too.
Thanks, Leanna. Appreciate you so much, and all your work both on the Working Families Tax Credit as well as always keeping a keen eye on bills that would be exploitative, like this bad payday lending bill. So super thrilled that you all were able to defeat that. We invited our community to speak up on that as well and sign in con. So thank you to everyone who did that. It's not all the time that we ask people to like oppose a bill. And this was a really, really important one that we were able to defeat together. So thank you, Leanna. And with that, we've reached the end of our legislative session recap. We're going to leave because we have more stuff, but go ahead and give some hearts, give some flowers to all of our presenters today. The folks in this room really represent a huge amount of work, organizing, and brain power, and we really appreciate you all. So thank you. And I'll pass to Allison, and then we'll go to our next section.
Thank you. I know this isn't on the agenda, but I just want to say thank you to you, Hallie, for really working closely, of course, with Danielle and Kevin and with Melanie, our contract lobbyist, who is on vacation, so she couldn't be here today, but really working on behalf of the coalition. So my overwhelming feeling from this morning is like, what a powerful thing it is to be in coalition. What an incredibly beautiful, powerful thing it is to feel the possibility and the power of what we can do, even under dark times, which we know are also happening. This is a reminder, of course, that collective effort works, but it doesn't always work instantly. That the fact that it was possible to pass a millionaire's tax in a 60-day session is because of years of work leading up to it. And, I think we should just take a moment while we're thanking people. And I really do think, Hallie, you've done a terrific job in shepherding all of us to be able to engage on all these issues throughout the process. But it's an opportunity for us to really think about this strength because we're going to need it to continue to defend this important work, the people who may be too focused on survival to be able to be going to Olympia, or going to City Hall or going to the County Council, even though we want and intend to keep them forefront. And we really do have a lot of power when we act together. So thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Thanks, everyone. That's really, really kind. And yeah, we definitely need to keep the energy going, because the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is about taking action on the federal government. So we've got, if you've been paying attention, you might know that there's some shenanigans going on in the federal government. And one of them is that the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, has a few really awful rules in the pipeline. This is kind of a weird and unique, like, federal process of rulemaking, where they can make pretty significant changes to policy, just like within the department, like not through Congress. And right now there's 3 bad rules that are open for public comment. And I'm going to highlight just one of them because it's the deadline is coming up soon on April 21st. They have proposed a rule that would, if it's finalized, and I should highlight that, like, this is not final yet, we still have opportunity to speak up against it, and you should. It would deny federally subsidized housing assistance to tens of thousands of families that include a person who is either undocumented or can't prove their citizenship status or eligibility to receive subsidized housing. So that, of course, includes people who are actually undocumented, but also lots of people experiencing homelessness, lots of people experiencing poverty, experiencing, shifts in their living situation, don't have the documentation that they need to be able to demonstrate that they're eligible to receive services. So it's really, really bad. It would separate a lot of families, and it would also likely disqualify a lot of people who are actually eligible but can't prove it. So I'm going to drop a link first to our blog post that explains this and all of the other 2 rules that are on the list. It's long, so sorry about that, but it has all the links that you need to take action. And then I'll drop a link directly to take action on this one. Taking action on federal rules is a little different from the things we normally ask you to do. It looks like a very, it's just like a different looking website. And we've suggested some language in the blog post. There's also some suggested language in that second link from the Keep Families Together Coalition that you can copy and paste and edit and make it your own. You can always submit anonymously if you prefer not to have your information on the record. And it's really important to submit comments for federal rules because HUD is actually legally required to review every comment and address significant issues in their final rule. That is a legal requirement. If you don't comply with legal requirements, you're subject to lawsuits. So that is a really important thing to do for us to be able to elevate significant concerns in the rulemaking process. So please do speak up. You can go ahead and open up those links or save them for later. We'll also include them in our wrap up. And I also want to make sure we mention some a recent training that we did on the changes to SNAP that are also coming from the federal government. So for that, I'll hand it to Kevin.
Thank you, Hallie. I want to make sure there's time for our community announcements before I start rambling on. I didn't see too many emails, but if you do have a community announcement, we're going to have time for you. So just bear with us. But yes, as Hallie mentioned, we just recently had our training on SNAP benefits, specifically changes to SNAP eligibility and access due to HR1. And so we have a recording for that, and we do want to share it with you. Many of you may have attended, but just also send it out to your networks as well, because it is such a rich resource. So let's go ahead and put that into the chat right now. The changes due to HR1 are already impacting communities all around the country. Again, massive changes that will impact millions of people. HR1, specifically, this changes to SNAP. It's the first program where people will lose access to benefits through new work requirements and reporting requirements, and specifically through the elimination of entire categories of exemptions, not to mention limits and stricter verification standards for disabilities and other remaining exceptions. So make no mistake, these changes are intended to limit people from accessing food benefits through SNAP. We know the most vulnerable people will be disproportionately impacted, including people experiencing homelessness and living with disabilities. This training was presented in partnership with Solid Ground Benefits Legal Assistance. Huge kudos to them. They are subject matter experts, and they handle appeals cases for benefits removal and changes. So in the training, BLA staff really dive deep. They explain what is happening, what's changing, and how you can help the folks you work with to the greatest extent possible. Also, how to connect with the Ask a Lawyer consultation program and the BLA appeal referral program. So please take a look at that link. It is in the chat right now. Okay, moving on to our final portion, community announcements. I think we've got a couple more links to drop for you, but like I mentioned, I see too many emails specifically for our community announcements portion today. So if you do have something that you would like to share out with everybody, please go ahead and raise your hand. We'll call on you. Oh yes, thank you, Danielle. We'll stop the recording.